Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. John here. It's time to start building our dream. So this week we are getting started on Project Rampage, the 2023 Eco-Diesel. Welcome to 2024. Big things are coming, and let me show you all the stuff we got to do. We're going to start off with suspension, and we're going to install the clay and lift. Over here we've got the bed rack, custom build out box, traction board. We bagged all the parts here, roto packs. We got the roof rack over here for the front. We are claying off road lift kit. We got our tires. And we got Mad Max over there to help us out, setting the awning. So once we get her all put together, we'll get her cleaned up and ready to go. And with that being said, roll the video. Hold on. So big thing is we're going to start off with the clay and off-road lift kit for the front. Things that we had to get to go from a gas Gladiator to a diesel Gladiator are the new 3.5-inch diesel springs for the front, and then we had to do the extended brake lines, and then Clayton included a 9/16 bolt for the front track bar because sometimes that'll give you a little bit of death wobble. If you haven't seen the video I did on the clay and off-road lift kit, go back. It's very detailed. It goes through all the steps to install this new extended brake lines for the rear. I left the old ones on there because of time. And after we do that, we'll put the tires back on. We'll start working the rear with the HD springs. Now, I did a video about a year ago that laid out the whole process. Things that I learned when we took a Ruby apart was when you take your control arm bolts loose, take them all the way to where the nuts flush with the end of the bolt. That'll leave everything nice and loose so that you can manipulate things into place, swap out one control arm or two control arms at a time. You do have to drop the axles way down. Make sure you take off the bolts that are on the frame for the brake lines and the ABS, and then watch your distance. You can do this without disconnecting everything, so you just have to make sure everything's taken loose and has enough slack so that it can be done. If you feel safer unplugging everything, by all means unplug everything, but pretty straightforward. There are going to be some things that are a little bit different on here. I already know there's a plate on the passenger side for crash protection. That plate's going to have to be removed, but for the most part we're going to start at the front and then do the rear, and then we'll focus on getting the rest of the gear installed. I'm gonna have quite a bit of wiring to do. I may not show you guys everything. We gotta wire up the winch, we gotta wire up the dual batteries, we gotta reinstall the aux beam, we gotta connect the lights and the radios and everything else back into the Jeep. So we're gonna do as much as we can. For the most part, I'm gonna get this thing up on jack stands. I'm gonna turn it to time lapse. You guys enjoy. I'm gonna be listening to some music, and we're gonna get moving on this project. This bracket right here is held on by these 3 bolts, but there's not enough room. You would have to lift the body up to completely unbolt these. And we're gonna get a battery and we're gonna take that thing off. Try and keep our blade on the saw as close to the bracket as we can without hitting anything else. Alright guys, let me show you what we got going on here. So in the back of this plate, it was a real pain. It's got 3 bolts on the front. It's got 2 hidden bolts, and they're so long that they actually, if you were to take them all the way out, you'd end up hitting the body panel right here. So we backed them all the way out, took the Sawzall in there, cut them out. It took a lot for the little hacksaw to cut through them. This is actually welded to the frame. I don't want to pull out my chisel because I don't want to damage the frame itself. What we may do is come back, depending on how the tires fit, cut this part at least because if this hits a rock, you know, that could damage the frame or something. And then but ideally you're probably not going to get anything up this high. I would hate to puncture a tire on this, so we may come back, cut this off here, and then, you know, cut it down and then grind it flat. I start taking all the little fasteners between the axle and the chassis, take all those loose, and then we already backed off the upper control arm. We'll back all the bolts off on both sides, and then we will start lowering the axle down, replace the springs, new springs in, new control arms, and try to get as much done tonight as we can. So that's at least the game plan. Just trying to point out minor nuances between the Eco-Diesel and the gas Gladiator, at least changes for 2023. This plate is a big pain. The downpipe to the DPF is right next to where the upper control arm bolt is. We had to do that one by hand. I think we may be able to get the bolt out, but that's going to definitely be the first arm we put back in. All the other arms should just go in as normal, but that one I just feel like it's going to be a bit of a pain. So we'll connect the back end loosely and then go to the front, and then we will crank down the jam nuts. The good thing is we did all the measurements. We will do some tweaking in the back, but let's just focus on the front for tonight and see how much we can get done. So the fun part is always trying to get the spring in here. You gotta remember to put your bolt and your cup in. What I like to do is just have everything kind of right here in the stage ready to go. Holy! Alright. Those bushings are definitely tight. Usually these just slide right in. Just make sure you don't get your fingers in there. There we go. And then once you get this up to the top, you gotta make sure it's lined up with the holes. There it is. That gives us another inch or two to play with. And our axle is not low enough. So may have to push the jack down a little bit more. So now it's under the tension of the spring and shock up to their side. Yeah, we can push down a little bit. Alright. Once we get that in, then you get to play Jenga. And you don't want to get your hands underneath there, and you don't want your feet under the axle in case it starts binding. Everything's loose. There we go. Alright, just like that. That's actually in position where it's supposed to be. Spring is exactly where it needs to be on the bottom. Now I just need to get our nut here, thread this on the bottom, and you kind of just stick this in your open-end wrench and get your finger up there underneath it. Well, you're going to take your Allen wrench and you're going to stick this in here. And you're going to probably do this by hand at first, because you got to go all the way up underneath this plate to where you feel the bolts, and you can actually feel it here. You take this back plate off. Alright, up in there, and we'll try to do this by hand. Alright, that's so it's gonna go anywhere. And then the control arms, we'll just rotate those out one at a time. Alright guys, so we just barely got started today. We got a lot of work to do. We got one coil in. Over on this side, we got to tear it completely apart, switch out the control arms. Got it on jack stands for tonight. And we're going to pick it up in the morning, guys. So today is day 2. We didn't really get much done yesterday. I was fighting this bracket for about an hour. We'll bump stop, and we still have to do control arms and everything on the front, do the back, and then continue the project. So turn you guys to time lapse and enjoy. Alright guys, I want to show you this up here where the DPF is, the top bolt. This thing is a real pain, so what I did is I put a pair of vice grips on the threads. You really don't want to do that unless you have to. In this case, the DPF pipe and everything, there's a little bit of space, but I didn't want to have to completely disconnect everything. So what I did is I put the vice grip on the threads. There's a little bit of a pry bar in there in order to take and get the bolt backed out. So that will definitely be the first bolt I bolt in for the passenger side. The gas model is not this big of a pain. It's almost like they don't want you to put a lift kit on these things at all. I feel bad for the dealers that are doing the Mopar lifts, because that is a real pain. You could disconnect, the banjo bolt up there. But I don't want to mess with anything that has to do with the EGR or the emissions on this thing. Alright guys, so we were able to slide the bolt back in to the Clayton arm. Apologies, it's a little dirty. It's already got 20,000 miles on it with the other Jeep. The bushings look amazing and everything's just bolting up, so it is a little bit of a pain. We got the other side on, but that was the main bolt that I wanted to make sure I did first. I can fight with the axle and move the axle around, but only limited space up there. Alright guys, I would be on camera, but my face is currently black. So here's the suspension. We got the Clayton off-road lift in there with the new diesel coils. Put the sway bar connects on, got the track bar in, got all the control arms back in. Still got a piece of blue tape on here, so if you ever switch your lift out, make sure you mark everything. So there's that. Take that off. I just use painter's tape so it wouldn't take any paint off or adhere too much to the to everything. Range of shocks are back in. That's where the bracket was. We ground that down and threw a coat of paint on it. Alright guys, apologies, my face is absolutely filthy. Got tires back on. We're taking the jack stands down. Suspension is all in. Move those out of the way. And front axle's under full compression right now with the jack. Pull everything down, turn the Jeep around. Ooh. Suspension done up front. Now we got to take this Carolina lowrider and do the back. We got the Jeep up on the lift here, or sorry, the driveway lift, I guess you could say. Jeep lifted up. We put it on jack stand, secure the rear axle. I put it in 4-wheel drive so it doesn't roll, and I chock the front tires. Plan of attack here is we're going to do actually the brake lines first, because you're really putting a lot of stress on these, because you have to drop this almost down to the ground. The Clayton lift gives you, an extra 9 to 10 inches of travel at least in the rear. One thing we are going to do is we are going to extend out our top arms, and we may shorten up the bottom arms probably a ½ inch longer, just to adjust our pinion angle. At full drop, I did not like how the pinion angle was that it's at right now is about how it was at regular ride height, and so you do kind of want your pinions to be lined up with your drive shaft. Sometimes it's good to have a little offset. Or a couple long arm kits, and I saw a metal cloak long arm kit that basically where that center carrier bearing is, because you get a two-piece drive shaft in the back with a carrier bearing like a regular pickup truck or a HD pickup truck. They'll let you keep those breakover angles, but what that does is you can get a carrier bearing spacer. Metal Cloak I think sells those too, like ½ inch, of which we may do. But what we're going to try to do today is adjust our arms out on the top just a little bit, so we get a little bit more angle. We still want to keep the axle centered with our control arms, but we don't want to do this 10 or 15 times. Clayton did a lot of the work already. I think the bottom measurement is perfect. The top measurement, I think it just needs to be a little bit longer. So we're going to look at the Clayton arms, see what we can do. Good thing about the back is the bolts are back and front are the same, and so those arms go rather quickly. Those heavy duty rear springs that are triple rated from Clayton, those things are long and they're a beast, and so that getting the springs in is probably the hardest part, because this axle has to drop almost all the way down in order to get them in. So we will try to do this one side at a time. We may have to take both sides completely loose, lower the axle almost all the way to the ground. I don't think you can do the spring with the control arms in on the back, simply because of how far down this axle goes. That and that pinion angle is a pain, and so that's why we're going to lengthen our upper links a little bit to push that axle pinion angle up a little. So really, if we go more than a ½ inch, we would want to come in, another ½ inch on the top. But what we'll probably do is go 4 or 5 threads on the top arms and adjust those. I digress, and we're going to get this project started. So turn you guys time lapse, and we're going to do as much as we can here and go from there. Thanks for watching. Alright guys, so what we did there is we took all the control arm bolts loose all the way to where they're flush, and that's going to give you the most amount of play. As you can see, we're starting to get strain on the hoses. That's why I said we were going to end up doing hoses pretty soon. Track bar bolt they're loose on both sides. I unplugged everything from the middle, so the 2 wires here going to the locker, those are loose because the axle's gonna have to come way down, so the springs are loose in their spring buckets. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna try the arms, but if I don't have room to do the arms, we will take and do the brake lines first, and we will actually bleed them after, but we'll just go through the replacement. Basically, you've got to have a couple of flare nut wrenches, so you can pick those up Harbor Freight or Tractor Supply, somewhere like that. The thing about a flare nut wrench is it's kind of like my fingers. It's got the actual paws, or like the design of Start Building Your Dreams. It actually goes in, slides down over the top of these, and it's going to give you more leverage. So if you use a regular wrench, you can't use the closed end. You got to use an open end, and that gives you only 2 surfaces, whereas the other style wrench, the flare nut wrenches, they'll actually come over and grip, and they got room so you can go around things like brake lines. Down here at the bottom there's a banjo bolt with a couple of washers. So the new kit you get from Clayton, if you order the diesel lift or the gas lift, in my case I was switching over, so I went ahead and ordered new brake lines. And I don't like messing with brakes unless I have to. They're just messy. The brake fluid is just nasty. It'll leak through paint over time. So if you leave brake fluid sitting on paint, it'll leak through the paint. But as you can see, we're a little bit tight. I moved this bracket up out of the way just so we could get to this. It's got a little clip on there. You get new clips too, so with the new brake lines you'll be able to slide those on. The extended brake lines, we'll come pull those out and do a quick side-by-side. Camera was dying last time I did this lift kit, but inside the back here you get 2 copper washers. Those are for your banjo bolt ends. So there's copper washers. You get 2 of those per side. They go on each side of this. As you can see, it's machined there, so that on both sides. And then when you look at the overall length of these lines compared to the other lines, these lines go down probably another 3.5, 4 inches at full drop. So these are going to help you out. These are simply not going to work, so you got to have the extended brake lines if you go, more than 2-3 inches of lift. With the 3.5 inch, these will do great. But let me go get those tools. As you can see, the Clayton actually has a better wrenching surface than the factory. The factory's got these little thin ones, so we'll do our best to get those off, and then we'll put a drip pan down there. Hopefully we don't shoot brake fluid everywhere, but this is always a mess. And then ideally before you hit the road, you want to, or even start your vehicle, you're going to want to make sure you bleed your brakes, because if you get air in your ABS system, it's going to cause you all kinds of issues. Alright guys, so the bottom one is a 5/8. I don't think I've got a metric that size. 5/8 works there. The top one is 12 millimeter. And the easiest way to do this is get your wrenches together and then squeeze them. In this case, we're going loose with the top. So there's that. Slide that over. And then we'll just squeeze this together. And that's going to keep that's going to give you the most leverage because your hand is naturally strong. So that's another tip I'll give you guys for brakes. I guess I'll show you some of the brake process. So I took my watch off too. These are nitrile gloves, and the brake fluid eats through these too. I've never found a pair of gloves that really does a great job on brakes, but you don't want that stuff staying on your skin. So I would at least get you a set of nitrile gloves to start with and go from there. And we may lose a lot of fluid, so what we did is we're gonna leave the cap on up front, and we're just gonna try to switch these out as quick as we can. This is going to have to go up and through. Make sure that wrench is ready to go. 17 is ready to go. And then we need to know what our bolt is down here, which is going to be a normal socket. I'm going to take a pair of vice grips here, and we're just going to pinch these off. Just let those hang. I'm going to take our 15 millimeter loose down here. Alright. Don't want all that fluid draining take our new washers. Even though this is a brand new car, we're still going to use new copper washers because you don't want a leak here. And if you wanted to, you could do the rest of the lift and then come back and do the brake lines. We're going to actually do the brake lines first. Hopefully there will be enough room to get the springs in there. So we got one on that side. And one on this side. And you'll want to check your torque specs. It's not much to crush these little washers here. But you'll put one on each side. It's going to be oriented just like it was before, at a right angle coming up. And I'm not going to touch the camera. I'll just have to show you guys after. Alright, then up top here, make sure we got our 17 ready to go. Hands where it's going to catch, and I got a little sawdust down here, so that's good. Alright, so that's how easy the flare nuts go together. And once it starts coming loose, get these flare nuts just kind of rotate. What we can do is we'll drain the fluid out of here and then quickly disconnect this one. And we didn't lose too much fluid. We're going to take this one up and start it by hand. So we got our 17 here, and then once we start getting tight, take our 15 in. And there wasn't a whole lot of pressure on there. Or 15/16, I guess. No, 12 millimeter, disregard. And so all that air that's in the system is going to have to come out. So and when you drive your truck after, you're going to want to make sure that everything is good and tight. You don't want to over tighten it, but you want to make sure it's definitely seated, and you want to be careful with the line. A bit crazy, but all right. You don't want to go too hard. Alright guys, so we are getting ready to start the electrical. We put the Clayton 3.5 inch Overland Plus lift kit on with the Rancho shocks and Toyo 37 inch MTs. So we're going to put back on the ARB stubby bumper. We got to wire up the winch. We got to put the light rack back on. And I'm going to try to keep all the electrical on this side. I don't know if they'll fit through the Freedom panels or not doing it that way. We may still run the CB antenna, even though it's going to be in the back corner. We may run it all the way around and down through the driver's side. The battery setup is a little bit different on the Eco-Diesel. On the gas engine, you kind of had the fuse box was in the back, then the battery, and then you had some other stuff up near the front. In this thing, you've got the fuse box, the computer, then the battery. So a little bit different configuration. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to end up mounting the aux beam controller, but we'll figure it out. The priority right now is to get everything bolted back onto the Jeep so that we can take and get this thing back up and to where we were, because we got 3 major projects coming up. We got a box from AEV, we got a shipment coming from Expedition 1, and we've got a shipment coming from Metal Cloak. So we want to get as much stuff as we can onto the Jeep and out of the garage so that when those deliveries show up, we'll have the tractor so that we can especially unload the one from Expedition 1. And I'm really excited about those, and it's going to be a great time. This Jeep, a phenomenal build with Ruby, and we're going to take it to the next level with Project Rampage. Alright guys, so just like we did on the last Jeep, you got to take these tabs out. You can just use a screwdriver or a pick on these, and then there's 4 bolts underneath, so really the only reason to take this top panel off is so you can get to those 4 bolts from the top side pretty easy. I like to try and keep all the parts and pieces together. As you saw in our last Jeep, basically everything was pretty straightforward, and this little panel just kind of pops in here. So if you want to see the full bull bar install, you can go back and watch my other video when we first did the bull bar and the aux beam controller. Since I run the aux beam controller, there's really only this one plug over here. You can take that loose, and then your factory fog lights, you could wire those up if you wanted, or if you got a different bull bar than what I've got that retains those, you could use them. But this piece of plastic comes out, and then we can get to the switch and we can get to those 4 bolts. Push in, push down, and it comes out. And then we can tape all that up. We're going to take this loose here. Set that down. 2 bolts on the outside here, 2 bolts towards the frame side. Get that one in. All right. Have to torque them down, and we'll make sure we do that before we put the winch back in. Alright guys, so we got the winch in, and it's just kind of setting in here right now. We're going to put the winch line through here, and then we got to put these little square nuts into the base of the winch, which is never really fun. It's always a pain. And then we've got to feed the bolts up from the bottom side and align those with the holes. Alright guys, so we got the winch in here started. We pulled out some of the winch line, lined up the bolts here. I don't know if it'll focus. Pulled out the bolts here. There's two here. There's two up there in the back. We tried to make sure everything was centered left to right. And now we're just going to tighten everything down. So far so good. I will say, check your motor. If you got a Rubicon, went from the factory, because when I was putting the lift kit on, I noticed this bolt here was loose, and so we had to come back and we had to tighten it down. And that's a QA/QC thing, and you know, that sway bar disconnect, a couple $1,000s, I'm sure, if you tear it up. So make sure you check all your bolts, make sure they're good, and we'll tighten this thing down. Hey guys, sorry you didn't get to see the full install. So we got the ARB bull bar installed with the Harbor Freight winch. Ran the wires to the aux beam controller under the hood. Got the roof rack mounted up and wired, so everything is wired except for the house battery. For the most part, she looks a lot like she did before we tore Ruby apart. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm so glad the Jeep's coming back together. Probably do some more work tomorrow. We still got all the cabinets here and the awning, and then the racks down there. We got to mount all that stuff back up. The tents in the back of Big Red over there. So got a lot of work to do. Less than 2,000 miles. Still have to do the back. Got the rack installed. Got the lights installed. A little better view. Alright guys, so here's a quick look at the Gladiator in pickup form. So we haven't shown it very much, but we got all the lights hooked up. We got the front grille and the ARB bull bar. Got the front pretty much wrapped up, all the internal electronics and everything. It's time to start on the back here. I've got another delivery today and then another delivery coming Wednesday, so I got a lot of work to do back here. This is probably the cleanest the bed's ever going to be, and once we get some weight on here, it'll settle down. We got the Wii Boost hooked up and everything else. Oh, this green, man, it's pretty. And the bed height on this is almost the same as the truck over there. So we'll do a side-by-side once we get loaded up. I gotta get the rack put on. There's a whole bunch of brackets that go on here, so we gotta get all those. And apologies, we didn't film a lot last night because I was working. Hopefully you guys, if you want to, you can go check out the Clayton lift video. If you missed anything with the lift, you can go check out the aux beam install video I did before, or you can do the ARB bull bar install. I've done installs on all this stuff before, so I don't want to recover a bunch of stuff that we've already done. I just want to give you guys a good once over as the project goes. Anything new, yeah, we'll probably try to do an install video for you, but other than that, I'm just trying to get some of the work knocked out so we can go back to adventuring and really enjoy the Jeep, because that's what it's for. The neighbor helped me put the tent back on. We put the awning on. Now I'm just going to start rough fitting in the custom drawer set. Not going to wire anything up tonight, but we'll keep going, because over in this corner we've got a big pile of stuff from Metal Cloak. upcoming project, so should be great. With that being said, let's get this thing loaded up. 1, 2, 3. All right, too bad. Oh man. Does not slide as easy on the as it does on the plastic ones. Is it going to clear the tailgate? It does. That's good. Check that out. Bam. DIY, start building your dreams goose gear look-alike. So pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. So what we'll have to do now is put our battery box in, get our fridge in. It's gonna be sent a little bit heavier than it was. Everything closes up, still got some space. So I think it's gonna be pretty nice.
Alright guys, so we got our delivery here. Up, so
that whole thing will be going on the back of the Jeep. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you would, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, ring the bell so you get the notifications, and keep coming back for more. I want to give a huge shout out to the team at Expedition 1. They are the first official partial build sponsors for this channel. Thank you so much. I'm going to do a full install video of the bumper, and I think it's one of the top quality bumpers on the market. Otherwise, I wouldn't put it on the Jeep. So every little bit helps, and thank you so much to the Expedition 1 team for letting me be part of the Expedition 1 family. For early access, check us out over on Instagram and TikTok, and thanks. We'll see you guys back here as we continue this build, and then here in the next month we're going to start adventuring again, going to shows and doing what we love to get out and adventure. So thanks for watching. See you guys back here next week.